Good morning, and thank you so much for joining me for our Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. You know what I like to do on the show. I want to enlighten you. I want to inspire you. I want to empower you to become your best self. Now, Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today we want to get you fired up about the author, Warren Padla. He's written the book, The Happy Clown. Now you know what I'm going to tell you to do now. Go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Good morning, Warren. Thank you so much for joining us here on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
It's a pleasure to be on the air with you. I never expected to do something like this, but I have many offers and I refused them. But since this was sort of a pastoral connection, and I'm interested in, that was the reason
Thank you.
chose it. Yeah.
I'm so happy that you did, and I really and truly appreciate that. One of the things that we take pride in, if you will, with this show is that we do honor faith. It's so important to me as a pastoral counselor. I think that we need to be that representative of what it's like to be and live a true Christian lifestyle. So thank you so much for coming on and wanting to share with us today. Now, before we get started talking about your book, there may be a few people out there, Mr. Padla, that are unfamiliar with who you are or perhaps with your work. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself? What makes you, you?
My name is Warren Padla, and now I'm going to read directly from the back of the book. Born in Brooklyn, New York, 1931, German and Russian parents, both born in New York. Served in the U.S. Navy from 1951 to 55, attended City College of New York and New York University. Received bachelor's and master's degrees at NYU. Worked at Equitable Life Assurance Society of the United States, an insurance company in New York City, from 1948 to 1987. After retirement, worked short time in real estate in Massachusetts, then became an antique dealer for more than 20 years. Began working as a volunteer at the Lord's Place in West Palm Beach, a drug and alcohol nonprofit organization, almost 20 years ago, and is still working at that rehab center to this day. Also did volunteer work for several years at Habitat for Humanity in Jupiter, Florida. More recently, taught an English conversation class for a nonprofit organization in Jupiter, Florida named El Sol, utilizing his fluency in the Spanish language. Began writing poetry stemming from his journalism training in NYU and placing his poems on High on Poems, an organization made up of other new poets. Is currently involved with Ex Libris in publishing a book of his poems, which will be dedicated to his close friend of more than 50 years who motivated him into writing poetry. Well, I guess the best way to answer that is I came from a very poor family. My mother married into a Russian family. That's what my last name is. And the marriage didn't work out, and my mother left when I was 5, went back with her mother and father, who had 4 other children, much younger than my mother. And I was the baby my mother moved back with her mother and father. And shortly after she moved back with me, unfortunately, her mother died. And my mother then had to raise her father, the 4 brothers, and me. And we were extremely poor. So poor that my uncles, during the winter months, had to go out to the garbage cans in the area in Brooklyn and get as many of the charcoals that were still usable and bring them home. And that's how we were able to heat the flat. With that background that I just gave you, I was a little bit of an oddball, and I wanted to escape that condition, and I wanted to rise up. And I was interested then, since I was spoiled with the 4 uncles. The next uncle was 10 years older than me. So, and then the other 3 were older than that. So I got spoiled by my uncles, and just time went on until my mother raised all the boys, raised me, and in 1945 she remarried. And then shortly after that, I went into the United States Navy, and when I came out of the Navy in 1955, I started my education to become a leader at the Equitable, where I had a job. And I kept, I kept going to college at night. I never went during the daytime. I always went at night. I went a little too strong because I finished my bachelor's in 4 years, and that was quite a challenge. And I had a little bit of a ulcer at that time from the activity. But I got through it, and my mother was so proud to go to my graduation.
Absolutely.
I had my bachelor's, and the Navy was behind me. The Navy paid for my education, and I kept rising up in Equitable, my job. I kept getting more and more elevated in positions, and finally I had a very high-level job in Equitable, and I stayed with them for 39 years, and I retired at 54 years of age because they were moving to Nashville, Tennessee, and there was no way they were going to get me out of New York City. So I took the golden handshake, and that was it.
Now, being an author, you decided to write the book, The Happy Clown. How did you come about such a title?
Well, first of all, that's the best question that I was waiting for you to ask, because this is kind of a interesting story and very motivational for the listeners. I had 38 credits of journalism in the beginning when I went to NYU, as I mentioned to you earlier. I thought I wanted to be a newspaper reporter, but before I lost all those credits, which took many, many nights, as you know, and many years, 4 years, I switched over to business, thank the Lord, and I was able to save those credits. However, those credits were for courses in writing, and I never used the capabilities over the years, except at my job at Equitable. It required a lot of writing. I wrote procedure manuals, and I wrote training programs. Whenever there were high-level meetings with the board of directors, I was the one picked as the secretary to write the minutes. So I did use my writing skills at work, but I never thought of writing fiction. And until my best friend of 50 years, who the book is dedicated to, Charles Toludo, he kept pressing me, please write a book. I said, no, I don't want to write a book. Please write a short story. I don't want to write a short story. And then finally, I was in Florida, just arrived in October, like I always do, from Massachusetts, where I chose to live. And I opened up all the sliders on the balcony. I'm on the 6th floor, and I'm overlooking the Intercoastal Waterway, and then Jack Nicklaus Golf Club, and then nothing behind there except trees and flowers. And I had the sliders open, and a cool breeze was coming in and moving the sheer curtains, the drapes, and going across my face right through my apartment. And I looked ahead, and there was the blue sky with the cumulus clouds, and I felt like I was in heaven. And I quickly took out a piece of paper, a pencil, and I started writing Breeze. And that was my first poem called Breeze. And when I read it to my friend the next morning, he flipped over it and said, oh my goodness, I told you. And that's what started the whole process.
I love it.
How do you like that? Let me squeeze something in here, Dr. Angela, for the listeners. A freebie. The breeze. Across a sleepy, low-lit stream, a quiet breeze swept by. It made its way across the land, determined and unshy. It covered flowers, rocks, and sand, and all within its path, with tiny droplets, wet and cool, a shower, soft and daft. Worn out at last for miles of flight, it fell to earth and out of sight, but left behind were gifts of life, like grass, like trees, like flowers, a mighty tribute to the breeze for all its final hours.
All right. I love it. What a great segue, because it is time for us to go to break. Now, before we do, Warren, can you please remind everyone, what is the title of your book and where can we get a copy?
The title of the book is The Happy Clown, one of my poems. It's available at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and Kindle Books. And if you want to get in touch with me afterwards, you can get me on W. Padla, that's my name, my first initial, and Padla at hotmail.com.
I love it. Alrighty, listeners, now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. My guest today is Warren Padla, and we're talking about his book, The Happy Clown. Now, I really like the title of this book because it's cheerful, and I love the things that are cheerful. Right? Tap into our positive side of life. Now, Warren, the next question that I have for you is, so many times authors choose to write because they are trying to make a living from their writing. Others sometimes write simply because they want to share their knowledge or just for the joy of writing. It's not about the money, it's just about the sharing. Did you find that when you first started writing that your mindset was, I want to make a living off of my writing, or did you find that you simply wanted to share your knowledge and inspire others through your writing?
Well, Dr. Angela, it's sort of going to sound a little repetitious, but as I told you, over the years, my friends including Charles Saluto, who I mentioned, that the book is dedicated to. My friends all said, "Oh my goodness, that Christmas card! You wrote that note on the Christmas card," and it. As I was saying, it really isn't too repetitious. Here's what happened. I had all those compliments from friends because I would write notes on Christmas cards, and they would call me up and say, "Oh, you sent the best Christmas card. You wrote the whole verse by yourself. It was so enlightening." I kept getting those kind of replies from so many of my friends that were all complimenting me on my writing. But I never wanted to go into short stories, books, or anything like that for money. I was not interested. But when my friend pressured me to do it, and then I discovered I didn't even realize that all my poems are enlightening and uplifting. That was not my goal. My goal was not to write enlightening and uplifting poems, but that's what happened. All the poems are uplifting. And especially now with the virus, I hope that some of the listeners take my word for it and find a way to read my poems, because I think it will help them during this terrible crisis we're going through.
Absolutely. You are so right about that. We do need things that are inspirational, that are uplifting, because it's a lot going on, and especially in the hot spots that are across our great nation, we need to make sure that people have something that they can hold on to. Now,
they will really, I'm telling you, they'll really be enlightened if they can, if fortunately they can get a hold somehow of my poems and either buy the book or somehow find a way to get to read them. Is there time for me to read my favorite poem to the audience? The one that always...
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, this is one, Dr. Angela, and this is the God's honest truth. This is a poem that every time I read it to someone new, when I'm finished with this poem, their eyes are filled with water. And this is my favorite poem since I've been writing poetry. And here it goes for the audience and you. Gray to blue. Blue skies in one's life can often turn gray and cloud up one's vision for quite a long stay. You falter and stumble in things that you do, and why it is happening, you haven't a clue. Your life seems to wallow in sadness and gloom, and thoughts of the future all focus on doom. But when least expected, soft lighting comes in and causes the gray in your life to grow dim. All color turns quickly to quite a bright blue, and dreams that you had of good life all come true. You think of the trials in your life that seemed long, and know now that all of the trials made you quite strong. You make it your duty to spread the good news, how life, once all grays, is now all bright blues.
Thank you so much for that.
Did it do it for you? No, that's one that really touches everybody and uplifts everybody. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a great poem to help us reflect and to reassess. And like you said, with everything that's going on, we definitely need to do that. Now, I was going to ask you about your process when it was, while you were actually doing the writing, did you find that you needed to be off to yourself? Did you need it to be quiet? Or did you mind the hustle and bustle of the day going past you?
I love that question because I'm dying to tell you the answer. After I wrote The Breeze, which was done under normal circumstances, sitting out, looking out my sixth floor balcony. I didn't mention I was on the sixth floor before. I got The Breeze. I got The Breeze finished. The next one didn't come for about a month, and it came during sleeping hours. And I got the theme for the second one while I was asleep. And when I woke up in the morning, I tried to remember the sentences and the words. And I couldn't get them as beautifully as I got them during that dream sequence or whatever you want to call it. And I said, oh, wow. And then the next night, again, it came back. The same theme, and this time more words and more sentences, and very beautifully done. And I woke up in the morning and tried to capture them. And this time I wrote a few down on a piece of paper, and but it wasn't exactly the way I had them so beautiful in the dream sequence. But after a few nights, like 4 or 5 nights of this, I had enough notes on my desk from morning, the jots that I did, that I was able to discontinue the dream sequence, and I was able to finish the poem in a few days or a week or 2 weeks on my desk. But it all happened during sleeping hours. And I still get the themes at night when I'm asleep. I never think of the theme while I'm wide awake. I thought that's very weird, and I imagine I'm a poet, and I imagine that's what's happening to me. And, of course, sometimes I'm very annoyed by it because I think I lose a few hours sleep with these sentences coming up. But in the end, I got enough notes on the paper in the mornings that I can put the poem together. And then, believe it or not, Dr. Angela, believe it or not, then it stops. Mm-hmm. I get a good night's sleep the next night. Mm-hmm. And then a few months will go by. Yeah. Mm-hmm. A few weeks will go by, and another one will come, and then I got to go through the same thing. So I get a little bit of a hiatus and a rest period in between the poems.
I love it. I love it.
The people ask me how long it takes to do a poem. You know, a lot of people that aren't poets are interested in how long it takes to do a poem. A lot of people ask me that. None of them come quickly. They all take time. And I would say mine, I average maybe 2 months before with it. Hello?
I'm here. I was letting you answer that question. Okay.
Oh, okay. Are you having fun?
All right. Now, my last question for you is about publishing any other books. So what does the future hold for you?
Well, I'm very glad you asked that question also. The organization I told you that I used to store my poems and publish them, was highonpoems.com. They are in India based, and I always had trouble with them on the computer. And finally, you can't even contact them or connect with them anymore. But I already have my book, and I have Ex Libris, so if I need copies of my poetry from the book, I can always go to Ex Libris. But I can't contact high-end poems anymore. So I switched over to a new wonderful organization in the United States called poetrypoems.com, and that's where I have about 11 or 12 new poems that are not published, and they will now be published just like the first one. I haven't picked out a name for the second book, but I will be working again with Ex Libris, which I had a wonderful time with doing the Happy Clown. They were wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
It is always great when an author has a great relationship with their publisher. It really makes the process a lot better.
Yes.
Well, Warren Padla, thank you so much for being on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela today and sharing your book, The Happy Clown, with your poetry. And we really appreciate your being here today. Thank you again for being on.
It was a pleasure talking to you. I felt very relaxed, and I hope the people that will be hearing your program are able to be uplifted by some of my poetry. That's my prayer. I don't need money. Any money that comes from the book, by the way, before I cut off, is going to St. Jude Children's Hospital. So that's where money will end up. Even my own estate money will end up there, because I have no children.
Yes. Oh, what a beautiful, beautiful thing that you are doing there. They do such wonderful, wonderful things, and I think that most people are familiar with the St. Jude charity. What a beautiful thing you are doing. Warren Padla, author of The Happy Clown, thank you again for being on.
Okay, I'm sending you a kiss over the air.
I accept it. Mwah! Thank you so much.
Wow.
I love it. Listeners, we thank you as well for tuning in and spending time with us today. We hope that we have enlightened, inspired, and empowered you. As always, may the Lord continue to shine His face upon you. May you receive His grace and His mercy in all that you do. Be blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.